Hello, 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 everybody. Please let me know if you can hear me or if the music is too loud. I am, as you can see, streaming from a different location. I am actually at my parents' house trying to take care of some very personal stuff here, but we're going to give you the news that you all crave, and I also need the break from what I'm dealing with over here. So we're going to do the news roundup like we said we would. On tonight's show, we will be talking about some funny, interesting things from crypto scams to congressional sex parties. That's what we're going to be doing here tonight. I will give the chat a couple more seconds to get in, but I do need to know if you can hear me okay. Let me see if I can test it on my end, actually. Yeah, hear it? Okay. Well, since nobody is saying anything, I'm just going to turn the lo-fi down a little bit. And yeah, so welcome, everybody. This is the Crowdsourced Politics News Roundup, and I am your host and moderator of the Crowdsourced Politics podcast, Cypher. We've been podcasting and streaming for about a year and a half or so, 2 years actually, now that I think about it. And we like to do the news roundup on Thursdays to give you a kind of a wrap up of the news that was from the previous 7 days with the kind of analysis only the crowd can provide. And in that vein, we like to do our best to give you the kind of information that might be hidden under the surface with a little bit of analysis and do all that kind of stuff. So if you like this show, go ahead and just smash that like button and everything. It really does help us out. So yeah, go ahead and like and subscribe. It does really do wonders for our channel, and we're actually seeing some decent growth in the last couple of weeks. So I'm glad that you all are here, because without you, we would just be some people shouting into the void that is the internet. And it's much more enjoyable to actually talk to people that want to talk and listen. Thank you, Wall Jump Network. Appreciate it. Thank you for letting me know the audio is good. All right. So yeah, if you didn't know, we do other podcasts as well as the Roundup. One of those podcasts is called Cipher State, and Cipher State is a foreign affairs and foreign policy focused podcast where we take an issue facing the geopolitical stage and cover it in depth, or at least as in depth as we can, in about an hour's time. We like to do this at least once a month, but due to situations beyond my control, we have not been able to do it for a time, but we will be getting back onto that as a regular scheduled program starting next month. April. By next month, I mean April. So we'll do the April show. We also are going to be doing another show called Praxis Run. And Praxis Run is going to interview people from both the political left, the American political left, and the American political right to try to understand them a bit better and find out what made them get into activism and put their ideology into practice, or otherwise known as praxis. So you can expect on that show to have interviews from school board members, or people that are running for school board, people that are pro-life activists or pro-choice activists, and anything that else you can think of: anti-war, pro-war, or American exceptionalism, the whole gamut, except for Nazis and racists. We don't want to give them a platform here. But you will run into some conservatives. You will run into some people that believe that certain things shouldn't be taught in schools and that sort of thing. And the reason why we're covering that is because we at Crowdsourced Politics want to tamp down on the vitriol that is impacting the United States and honestly the world. And we felt the best way to do that was to interview people that might think differently than us in order to understand them better. Like they say, know your enemy, right? So that's why we're going to be doing it. And we're hoping, and it was a little tongue-in-cheek, we're hoping that that will kind of bridge political divides as much as possible and at least humanize people that might otherwise be demonized for their beliefs, both on the left and the right. So that's what we're doing. But without further ado, did you paint your parents' pool? Because that's what I did last weekend. No, mine's a bit more serious than that, Hybert. I'll talk about it afterwards, maybe. But yeah, but without further ado, let's go ahead and actually get the show started. All right. All right. I'm gonna put the lo-fi back on because I think it sounds all right. A little bit of background music. All right. So at the top of the news, we're going to begin with a recap and updates about what has been happening in Ukraine, what Russia's very much illegal aggressive act has wrought on the people of Ukraine. So Russia finds itself in the sixth week of their invasion of Ukraine, and the war continues to surprise Vladimir Putin. Putin finds himself as a pariah in the world, faced with a newly united NATO and the staunch resistance of the people of Ukraine. There were reports today from U.S. intelligence officials that Putin, quote, seems to be self isolated. And also, there's some indication that he has fired or put under house arrest some of his advisors. Excuse me. Peace talks have been sporadic and inconclusive, but officials from Ukraine and Russia continue to meet in Turkey. Ukrainian officials said this week that during the talks, their country is ready to declare itself permanently neutral. This is one of the things that Putin has very much demanded. No acquiescence to NATO, no, and at least neutral in the terms of militarily. So maybe doing trade with the EU, maybe even potentially joining the EU, but not joining NATO. Now, continuing on, security guarantees would mean that a diverse group of countries, potentially including some NATO members like the United States, Britain, Turkey, France, and Germany, would commit to defending Ukraine if it were attacked. I think that Russia is going to demand that the United States stays out of it. So we could very much see possibly Turkey, France, and Germany joining into a NATO-like pact with Ukraine, but the United States being kept out of it. Now, some security analysts, however, say that sounds very much like NATO's doctrine of collective defense by another name. Turkey's president said today that the country would, in principle, help guarantee Ukraine's security. Other countries could potentially follow. The request took Washington by surprise and caused concern among diplomats that this would never be acceptable to Russia. But in the Ukrainian negotiations, on their part, the Ukrainian negotiators say that the security guarantees could help end the war. But in practice, such an arrangement would greatly resemble what NATO membership already is. The guarantors countries would have legal obligations under international law to provide weapons, military personnel, or financial help if conflict involving Ukraine were to erupt. They claimed that the talks were already underway with the United States, Britain, France, Germany, and Turkey, and asserted that those countries had shown willingness to accept the terms. Quote, this is the meaning of this pact. A country who considered to attack will know that Ukraine is not alone, and other countries are with Ukraine with their armies and their weapons. Now, obviously, such an arrangement would mean that the potential that Western powers could become ensnared in armed conflict with Russia. As of our airtime, it is unclear if any of the countries named by the Ukrainian negotiators have signed on or even expressed a willingness to defend the country against Russia in the future. There have been reports, though, from the Kremlin that Russia intends to de escalate the fighting in Ukraine. But it is believed that the talk of de escalation is actually cover, and that Russia is regrouping and resupplying its forces and redeploying them for a stepped up offensive in eastern Ukraine. We've seen some of this as troops have pulled back around Kiev, but have actually, Kiev, I should say, from Kiev, and have repositioned some of their forces already in eastern Ukraine in the Donbas region. Now, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said Ukraine is seeing, quote, a buildup of Russian forces for new strikes on Donbas, and we are preparing for that. There is little faith that the two sides will resolve the conflict anytime soon, particularly after the Russian military attacks in zones where it had offered to dial back. Russian President Vladimir Putin said that the conditions weren't, quote, ripe for a ceasefire in Ukraine, and that he wasn't ready for a meeting with Zelensky until negotiators do more work. As Western officials try to determine what Russia's next move might be, a top British top British intelligence official said demoralized Russian soldiers in Ukraine are refusing to carry out orders and sabotaging their equipment and had, quote, accidentally shot down their own aircraft. In a speech in Australia, Jeremy Fleming, head of the GCHQ Electronic Spy Agency, said Putin had apparently, quote, massively misjudged the invasion. And I have to sneeze. Give me a second. Thank you. U.S. intelligence officials have concluded that Putin is being misinformed by his advisors about how badly the war is going because they are afraid to tell him the truth. This is what happens when you surround yourself with a bunch of yes men or instill so much fear that any contrary evidence to what you actually want to happen is happening could set you up for the loss of your life. And since Putin has, over the last 5 or 6 years, increased his reliance on violence to get what he wants and maintain his power, those that are surrounding him are afraid to speak the truth. When you don't have anybody to speak truth to power, this is what you get: a bunch of yes men unable to do what is right and necessary to not only protect themselves, to not only protect their country, but in many cases, protect themselves. Now, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said that the U.S. is wrong and that, quote, neither the State Department nor the Pentagon possesses the real information about what is happening in the Kremlin. Now, President Biden, for his part, was in Warsaw this week to meet with NATO and EU leaders to discuss next steps in the West's defense of Ukraine. Biden spoke for 30 minutes in a message of unity, hope, and condemnation of Putin's actions. Let's go ahead and watch the end of his speech now. It's going to take me a second to get that up because I am using my laptop. Hold on a second. Share screen, Chrome tab, and oh, they're out of order. Where's Biden's speech? There it is. Sure. All right. Let's start over because it was a little low. There we go. Oh, what the heck? Hold on. I am so sorry, everybody. So I'm using a different program than I normally use, and it didn't automatically put it on the screen when I shared my screen. There we go. And then let's also get rid of this background. Can I? How do I just hide that? It doesn't matter. All right. Now we're going to go ahead and play this. I am sorry, everybody.
So in this hour, let the words of Pope John Paul burn as brightly today. Never, ever give up hope. Never doubt. Never tire. Never become discouraged. Be not afraid. A dictator bent on rebuilding an empire will never erase a people's love for liberty. Brutality will never grind down their will to be free.
True.
Ukraine will never be a victory for Russia, for free people refused to live in a world of hopelessness and darkness. We will have a different future, a brighter future, rooted in democracy and principle, hope and light, of decency and dignity, of freedom and possibilities. For God's sake, this man cannot remain in power. God bless you all, and may God defend our freedom, and may God protect our troops. Thank you for your patience. Thank you.
And that was the speech from Biden. Now, this is one of the things that people had said was a gaffe. People said that when Biden said that Putin must not remain in power, that was a call for regime change. I personally find it to be interesting that a lot of people on the political right of the American political system are up in arms about this gaffe, given their support for Trump telling it like it is. I thought that they liked a man that spoke truth. I thought they liked a man that was off the cuff and wasn't very polished. Biden is saying what everybody is thinking here. Putin is a despicable person. He has failed his people in Russia, and he is failing in the world order. When anybody tries to implement imperialism on another people, they are in the wrong. And yes, that does include the United States when it went to war in Iraq in 2003. So, before anybody tries to call me a hypocrite, that's the truth there as well. So that's what Biden had said. Now, but it was just now that was also what I just said was the 5 words that everybody focused on. Now, to be clear, President Biden has said that he was speaking from his own deep moral outrage. His statement did not indicate America or NATO are seeking regime change in Russia. And I believe this to a degree. I think that a lot of people would be better off if Putin was no longer in power, but that is not the official position of the United States, and that is clear by what the United States has been doing in Ukraine, and as well as the sanctions that have gone on in Russia. The sanctions that are in Russia are trying to gear towards attacking those in power and getting them to leave their support for Putin, but they're not designed necessarily to foment revolution and to dispose of their Putin as the leader. What it is designed to do is to make this war very painful for not only Putin and his coteries, but also to an extent the Russian people themselves. Once that pain is being felt and the economy is in shambles, which it is currently undergoing right now, it makes the war less popular and it exposes Putin for the weak man that he actually is. We did get some comments from the audience, so let's go ahead and get some of those up. So Harbert is saying, I already love it because Biden is saying what everyone with a brain and a heart knows. And I'm glad that you could at least hear the audio while I was trying to get the video up. Appreciate the comments there. So yeah, that is what we have going on as of right now in Ukraine. So let's continue on now towards US politics directly. And in this case, we're going to talk about a very strange thing, like we're talking about Congress in the late 70s and 80s. What are we talking about? Of course, we're talking about cocaine and blowjobs. All right, let's get to it. So, orgies and drugs and Cawthorn, oh my. So, Madison Cawthorn topped the news this week for something he said during an interview. Let's go ahead and take a look at that now. Again, this is going to take me a second. Oh, before I get into that, so this is the West dude, friend of the show. Glad you joined us. So, Putin just made a power move in telling Europe that they have to open accounts in Russia banks and buy their gas in rubles, not Europe. That's true. Thank you for telling us that. That's true. He's trying to make this power move. But I think what we're going to see here in a counter to that is that American gas is going to end up being exported to Europe so that is not necessary. But we'll see in the next week or so. And I'm sorry if I'm blowing into my mic a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and share the new tab here. All right, just how corrupt is DC? Let's listen to Madison Cawthorn in his own words here. This is going to be about a minute-long clip, and so we're going ahead and play that now.
Being kind of a young guy in Washington, with the average age of probably 60 or 70, and I look at all these people, a lot of them that I've looked up to through my life. I've always paid attention to politics, guys that, then all of a sudden you get invited to, like, well, hey, we're going to have kind of a sexual get-together at one of our homes. You should come. And I'm like, what did you just ask me to come to? Yeah. And then you realize,
oh my God, he got invited to a swingers party. Y'all, I can't. They invited Madison Cawthorn to a swingers party. He'd be top meat too on that. Yeah, I said it, top meat. Dude, I'm not surprised. Anytime you have people with power, you have people that want to exert that power in a sexual manner. Not necessarily against people's will, but they want the ladies and the men too, to come and play in their gardens. Let's continue on watching this, though.
They're asking you to come to an orgy. Yeah. Or the fact that, there's some of the people that are leading on the movement to try and remove, addiction in our country. And then you watch them do, a key bump of cocaine right in front of you. And it's like, wow, this is
nice. Talking about the 80s.
This is wild. And then there's also kind of the whole espionage aspect of what goes on in Washington of, so many people trade in secrets, and there's a currency to secrets. And so it's wild. And then, there's members of the media, the journalists, who kind of will keep nasty stories about you or about other people on a shelf. And then if you're about to kind of speak out against something they don't want you to, they'll come out and say, well, we're about to drop the story of when, 17 years ago you did X, Y, and Z, and you don't want us to drop that story, do you? So we're going to believe.
See, this is the thing with that, though. if you're not ashamed of it, who gives it? Like, how do you care if you're not ashamed of it? Back in my day, I did a little thing or two. I'm not ashamed of anything I did. Try to blackmail me. I don't give a fuck. I am telling y'all. Like, if you find out something that Cypher here did a little freaky deaky in the sheets, man, like, hey, that's just life. You're gonna have to deal with it. It'll be like that sign that scene in Billions where he's like stands up there and he goes like, I'm a submissive and I like my wife to dominate me. Like, if that comes out about me, not saying that it will, I'm just saying that's the way you have to approach this thing. So Madison Cawthorn, I think this is on you. Um, Live your true self, Madison. Live your true self, bro. But that's all we're going to play from the clip today. So let's talk about it some more. So now GOP Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy told reporters that he told Cawthorn during a private meeting that he had, quote, lost my trust. McCarthy insists that the allegations Cawthorn had made during a podcast interview last week were exaggerated, according to Axios. Oh, okay. Hey, did McCarthy just tell on himself? I think he did. Ooh, boy. Now, this is also coming from McCarthy. Quote, it's just frustration. There's no evidence behind the statements. I told him that you can't make statements like that. As a member of Congress, that affects everybody else and the country as a whole. I think he's telling on himself, bro. Now, McCarthy said Cawthorn's comments upset many lawmakers, and he warned Cawthorn could face consequences for what McCarthy said was a unacceptable remark. Amid the backlash to his comments, Cawthorn shared a digital ad to his Twitter account declaring that he has been targeted, quote, as a public enemy number one, and categorizing him as his constituents' champion for faith, family, and freedom. Let's go ahead and also watch that ad now. Again, it's going to take me a second while I tab over. Here we go. Oh, he's saying it's the okay. Okay. So first of all right, let's read this little breakdown here. The radical left. All right. I'm sorry. Let's put this on the screen. Come on. There we go. This is weird how this thing works. All right. All right. I'm assuming you all can see it. The radical left, the establishment, and the media want to take me down. Last time I checked, dude, McCarthy is a Tea Party dude, and he hates Democrats and the left, and I'm pretty sure he's kind of a reactionary. Their attacks have been relentless. You kind of aired some dirty laundry, so the P sheets to speak. And I think this might have been you talking out of your ass a little bit. I won't stop fighting. I won't bow down to the mob. They want to silence the America First movement. Fascist. I'm not going anywhere. All right, let's watch the ad now.
The entire left-wing establishment has targeted Madison Cawthorn as public enemy number one.
Yeah. Okay.
Their smears and attacks are relentless, and they've tried everything to take him down. But Madison Cawthorn cannot be stopped, and that's why they are terrified of him, because he's effective. Despite all adversity, Madison Cawthorn continues to stand up and fight to represent the people of North Carolina in the D.C. swamp.
This is a good ad.
Faith, family, and freedom, and will never stop putting America first.
I'm Madison Cawthorn, and I approve this message.
The entire
That was a good ad. I'm not gonna lie, especially that standing up part. That was good. He's got a good PR team. I will say that. Now with that said, though, it's just bullshit. Like I said, I'm pretty sure that the people that are attacking him now are Republicans that don't like having their laundry aired, and they're normally on his side politically. You know, McCarthy's pretty much like trying to go American first, but kind of still stay a little bit moderate here. But you know, people have called him a Yahoo and Trumpy and whatever. So I guess there's some little stuff to that. But let's continue talking about the story just a little bit longer. Now, so to make things even stranger, CNN Capitol Hill reporter CNN Capitol Hill reporter Milani Zanora reported that McCarthy issued an odd warning. Cawthorn, this is what she's tweeted. So Cawthorn, quote, needs to take steps to turn his life around, or else there could be consequences. Zanora tweeted on Wednesday. Now, it's unclear what is exactly is going on in Cawthorn's life that requires turning around, or what those consequences he could face. However, in any case, the comments made may be a breaking point for the GOP's tolerance for Cawthorn, who has already landed in hot water repeatedly for his remarks about the January 6 riots, Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky, and multiple allegations. Yes, multiple allegations of sexual assault during his time in college, which wasn't that long ago. And, there doesn't help that he seemed to have gotten a mail order bride from Russia that might have been handed to him by Putin. Just going to put that out there too. But I want to know your thoughts. So let's go ahead over to the chat real quick, make sure that we are seeing this. All right. So let's start up with, let's see, I'm going to go in order a little bit here. Let's see, traces of. Okay, so yes, this is true. So I didn't talk about this. So thank you, Herbert, for talking about this. I know of investigative reporting in both the UK and Germany, which concluded that traces of cocaine were found in the bathrooms of Westminster and the Bundestag, exceeding those of high-end nightclubs. And I have seen on Twitter that people said, time to test Congress as well. Ah, yes, it's gonna get juicy in here, baby. Love it, love it. Continuing on. McCarthy thinks he can put the thumb screws on the rookie who's never been to a Republican cocaine-fueled orgy for the simple reason he's brand new and in a wheelchair. True, true. That is what's going on. All right. Continuing on with comments here, maybe it isn't me from over on the YouTube, says that guy is a fucknut. His cocaine orgy tales are complete bullshit. There might be some, yet I doubt it. Yeah, it's not the 80s anymore, but the fact that he's getting this much pushback from his colleagues in the House makes me believe that there might be a little bit more truth to it than what actually meets the eye. Let's see. And then the West dude says, quote, I don't know if you watched snippets, but Marjorie Taylor Greene was on Timcast, and she said that in her first week, she pissed off Pelosi and almost got evicted because they were passing laws with like 30 to 430 reps in attendance by raising hands and shit. It cut you off, so I'll read the rest of it. In attendance by raising hands, and she started calling for record votes, which means everyone has to go in and they record who votes and how. I think that was her contention, but she's actually almost got kicked out because of her comments about Jews. So, and January 6th, I believe it was. And then maybe it isn't me says they are worried he might talk about the nest that many on both sides party at. I don't know what the nest is. I'm just going to take your word for it. Whoops. But thank you all for the comments. I really do appreciate you all when you're commenting on these videos and keeping me informed and keeping me honest. I do greatly appreciate that. So let's continue on now, though, and talk a little bit about some plans to do with student debt. So a bipartisan group in Congress wants President Biden to extend a pause on federal student loan payments through at least the end of 2022 and cancel student debt altogether. In a letter dated Thursday, 21 senators and 75 members of the House urged Biden to push back the May 1 date when federal loan repayments are scheduled to restart. Biden most recently extended the pause in December. Biden's chief of staff said in a recent interview that the administration is considering extending the pause a fifth time. The legislatures are also pressed Biden, a fellow Democrat, to provide meaningful student debt cancellation. While House Speaker Nancy Pelosi contends that it is not within Biden's power to unilaterally cancel the debt, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer disagrees. And the disagreement here is based on some of the language included in the student loan repayment program that was passed, I want to say, along with the ACA. It was during the financial crisis, which gives the Department of Education the ability to pause or cancel debt during an emergency. The intent, though, there, and if we're getting, and we got another originalist on the court, people, so it's probably dead in the water from a court's perspective, is that the intent, though, appears to be that these These regulations, these powers that were granted by Congress to the executive, are meant to be used sparingly and in a time of crisis, in order for the executive branch to react more quickly than Congress could, in order to alleviate the pain that people might be facing during an economic downturn, a pandemic, natural disaster, etc. It is not intended, as it is written from my reading here, and I'm not a lawyer, but I've had lawyers tell me that they agree with me, to be able to unilaterally cancel debt entirely. I think Nancy Pelosi is correct and Chuck Schumer is wrong. But this is the divide that we have currently in the Democratic Party. There was a okay, true. Like there was a Twitter post that went around saying, "Oh my God, I got an English degree. I'm going to be a barista," and there is some truth to that. But English degrees are actually pretty good for programming and putting together podcasts and things like this. My my wife, she's got a degree in forensic science and English communication. She actually helps me out a lot with this. So thank you, baby, if you're watching this. All right. So continuing on. So we also have some COVID legislation coming out of Congress as well. So now key senators are nearing a deal on roughly $10 billion package of coronavirus relief, setting Congress on a path to deliver funding Democrats had hoped to pass weeks ago. The sum would leave out a major ask from the White House. It doesn't include $5 billion in global vaccine efforts, drawing sharp complaints from many Democrats about the nation's preparedness to fight the pandemic abroad. Quote, "My understanding is there's a deal, and we're going to get briefed on it at lunch," said Senator Tim Kaine, Democrat from Virginia, adding that he was, quote, "very upset that billions in global vaccine funds would be excluded. That was a really real missed opportunity." Quoting again, "They're pretty close to working out a deal on 10 billion," said Senator John Cornyn from Republican of Texas, said of the closed door efforts, 10 billion is a lot of money. But some in the majority party are deeply unhappy with the compromise being negotiated with Republicans, warning that the loss of global aid will have consequences and spelling possible trouble for the package fate in the House. Key senators on both parties began deal making in earnest this week on the revised aid package. Schumer has negotiated closely with the GOP Senator Mitt Romney from Utah, Roy Blunt from Montana, Richard Burr from North Carolina, and Lindsey Graham from South Carolina. Democratic Senator Patty Murray of Washington and Chris Coons from Delaware were also part of these negotiations. Senators clarified that there are still some bumps to navigate before a floor vote. Romney said they're still waiting on a score from the Congressional Budget Office, and Murray said that the total is still in flux, so it's too early to say that their work is done yet. The full package could clear the chamber in the coming days and head to the House, where many Democrats are deeply unhappy about the plan to significantly downsize the package. Multiple House Democrats are already threatening to withhold their support for a pandemic bill that does not include the $5 billion in global vaccination funds. Even if they cannot negotiate a bigger price tag, several lawmakers said they will demand that there are at least some of the funding goes towards international health efforts. And I'm gonna wrap here a little bit. Oh no, no, we already talked about that. Nope. So I'm gonna wrap up here a little about this. So Democrats are actually not wrong on this, but given how where the country is in terms of its nationalistic bent, the inflation, and where people's concerns primarily are with the economy being what it is, I think it might not be politically tenable, even though it's morally just, to extend vaccination aid help uh, overseas. Personally, I don't know what that dollar figure should be, but it being 5 billion, I don't know how much that's actually going to impact anything, but I do believe that we should be giving more than what we have been in the past. And I am glad that Biden has directed some of the vaccines that didn't get distributed in the United States over and directed those overseas and to help places in the third world, quote unquote third world, South America, Africa, places in South America like Chile. I think Brazil got some. Um, Nicaragua definitely got some vaccines, and in Africa with Nigeria, Morocco, Egypt, etc. I think that that's a good thing. I think the more people we can get vaccinated across the world, the better off humanity as a whole will be. And I don't want to see what some people have said is a new class of those that are vaccinated versus those that are not vaccinated, where we'll have the pandemic still raging within the quote unquote global South, um, and basically over and done with nobody caring in the developed world. So I do feel their concerns. What we're likely to see with this vaccination package or this COVID-19 package is that we'll probably see that $10 billion cover, like they said, some of those vaccines going overseas, and we'll probably see some more deals being made with either with Pfizer specifically, to get vaccinations across the globe. So that's probably what we'll see. We'll probably see that coming to an extent. All right. All right. Let's see. The control vaccines responsibility would withhold them at our own peril. True. 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 Yeah, this is a good one to talk about a little bit. So the West dude said, I think the student loan debt issue is rife with nuance, but the core problem is people getting degrees without any clue on how to monetize them to pay them back their loans. There is some truth to that. I also understand though that a lot of people that get degrees, um, they had a plan going in, and then that plan fell apart after they graduate. That was my situation. My plan was to get a degree in criminal justice and a degree in political science, parlay that into a law degree, so go from undergrad to graduate school to law school, and become a lawyer. But I graduated in 2008. The economy took a turn for the worst, and my plan completely failed and fell apart after I didn't score at least a 165 on my LSAT, because nobody was hiring lawyers at the time, and I couldn't justify the 100K additional debt that I would receive on top of the 78K that I had for student debt. That's a me problem. I'm not saying that my debt was anybody else's fault, but so my plan fell apart, and I putzed around literally for 2 years trying to figure out how to parlay my degrees into actual jobs, given that the job market had just disintegrated essentially. So that has to be understood by people as well. I also think that degrees in general, it doesn't matter what it is, as long as it's an advanced degree, are beneficial to society as a whole, and therefore we should have that burden shared a little bit more, because everybody benefits from a highly educated population. All right, but let's continue on though. And just to let everybody know, this news roundup might be a little short this week, simply because of stuff that I'm taking care of. Like you see, I'm in a new place. This is my parents' house, and I'm taking care of them right now. So it might have to be a little short if my mom wakes up. So just FYI. All right. So let's continue on and talk a little bit about transgender rights. So today is Transgender Visibility Day, and the Biden administration marked the occasion with a series of firsts for the United States. President Biden celebrated the contributions that transgender Americans have made to the country and criticized Republican led efforts to pass legislation that the White House says is dangerous to trans people. Quote, to everyone celebrating Transgender Day of Visibility, I want you to know that your president sees you, he said in a recorded message. Our entire administration sees you for who you are, made an image of God deserving of dignity, respect, and support. But we know it's hard when there are those out there that don't see you and don't respect you, Biden said. Andrea, uh, Andrea. Andrea Hong Mara, the executive director of the Transgender Legal Defense and Education Fund, called the Biden administration, quote, the most active in history in supporting the transgender and non binary community. Quote, our friends in the administration have held the door open to ensure that we always know we matter and to translate the respect into policies that protect our rights. Much of the White House's attention today focused on transgender children, some of whom will join their parents at the White House to meet Emhoff and Rachel Levine, the Assistant Secretary for Health and the first openly transgender person to hold an office requiring Senate confirmation. The State Department has marked a first for the U.S. today, announcing that the quote X gender marker for those who do not identify as male or female will now be allowed on passports as well. The ruling goes into effect on April 11th, and the Department of Homeland Security is working with airlines to facilitate its use for travel and security. The Transportation Security Administration's policies and procedures are also being updated to limit the use of gender based pat down searches and other measures deemed particularly invasive for transgender people. When you're talking about this stuff, it's like there's a different way that men and women presenting get pat down. And so if you have the hand go up the skirt or something on a transgender woman, that could be very uncomfortable for them. There are ways to do a full screening and pat down that wouldn't do that. You'd be able to still use the entire that it's the X-ray machine, the one that goes like this though. I don't know if that translated well on screen, but you know what I'm talking about if you ever went through TSA, and that picks up everything. And then there's also ways to pat down people without necessarily touching anyone's genitals by mistake. So it's just that's the way it is. Okay, where was I? Okay. So continuing on. And the White House announced federal agencies, including the Department of Health and Human Services and the Department of Education, are unveiling new resources and procedures for transgender people and particularly children, as well as parents and healthcare providers. Finally, by the fall, transgender people will no longer have to provide a doctor's note to update their gender identity with the Social Security Administration's office. The changes were among a slate of actions taken by on Transgender Day of Visibility, meant to affirm the identities of transgender and non-binary people in the United States and tackle the challenges that they face. The administration is also earmarking $10 million to research how best to add questions regarding gender identity and sexual orientation to the Census Bureau's American Community Survey. And this is particularly important. The census is our best way to understand how people, or what kind of people, I should say, are present within the United States, be they citizens or else or whatever. Because the census is supposed to count every person, not every citizen. Remember that whenever Republicans tell you otherwise. And if we do not have this demographic data, these demographic questionnaires on there, we might miss how much the U.S. is changing and how much people may feel one way or the other about particular topics. For example, under the Trump administration, he put down do what did he put down other or something when it came to race or whatever, and there was like a thing on there for um like ethnicities for Europeans, and it was very strange because it didn't have like a way to um, handle on the census intake form to handle people that are multi-ethnic. And so there was a lot of people like, well, what do I put, right? Because you can only put one. They eliminated the double box check or something. I just told people to put American down because hey, we're all Americans, right? But that's how we gather data and try to understand where demographically the United States fits. And so having these questions on there in a way that is um, in line with how transgender and non-binary people would like to see it is actually very good and is a step towards progress. Even if you think that you're a conservative or you don't quote unquote buy into transgender people or whatever, however you want to say it, if that's you, this is still a good thing to do, even if you're against their existence to an extent. You want to know how people are. So yeah, that's where I stand on this. Now, the administration's moves comes in the wake of several states putting forward legislation that targets transgender and non-binary people, as well as other members of the LGBTQ plus community. Now, so um, let's continue on. There's more stuff to this, though. Now, a new poll finds that parents are okay with teaching on gender identity and sexual orientation in schools. This is contrary to a lot of the states' passage of laws that are being deemed across the country, quote unquote, don't say gay. The National Parents Union surveyed 1,000 parents of K through 12 public schools. The poll was conducted from March 18th to the 21st. Majorities of parents support a classroom instruction about gender identity or sexual orientation in K through 12 public schools. Only about a third said that it should be encouraged, according to a new poll shared exclusively with Business Insider. Parents of younger children were more resistant to such instruction, with 35% opposing it in elementary school compared to 25% in middle and high school. So this kind of tracks with parents' overall idea of what should be exposed to their children. A lot of people, and I've gotten to many debates on this on Facebook with people. They think talking about this is sexual, as in sex, like procreation, sexual. I don't see that. And I think this is like a very American thing of people's hangups around the idea of sex in general. And I would like to see that not necessarily entirely go away. It's fine for people to have hangups, but for people to understand that there is a difference between gender, sex, and sexual activity, if that makes sense to y'all. But before I continue on, I just noticed that we have a ton of comments in the chat, so I'm going to go ahead and see if I missed anything that is good. So let's see that. Yes, I kind of agree. It's pretty evil how the GOP are trying to exploit transphobia to their benefit and cultural issues. So hide that. Oh, I didn't mean to pin messages. Undo that. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and continue on with this. So the survey highlights parents' views on classroom instruction about race and gender, both topics at the center of cultural war battles in politics as parents seek a greater say in their children's education. I, I mean, I don't know if I would necessarily say it's a greater say, but it's more spoken about. I think it was always there, and parents in general have very much been wanting to teach their kids to learn what they believe as a worldview, and it's just now that schools are introducing other worldviews that are in conflict with people across the Bible Belt in more, and it's happening more. That conflict is happening more. So I think that's what I would say, contrary to what the polling is suggesting. Now, continuing on though, most parents thought that they, 87%, along with teachers, 88%, should have a lot or some influence on what and how public schools teach, compared to 60% for state legislators. The poll showed parents were more enthusiastic about teaching of race in schools, with more than half saying teaching about racial inequality, both in America's past and present, should be encouraged, which is a good sign. Nearly 60% said that more U.S. history lessons should encourage. No, I'm sorry, excuse me. Nearly 60% said more U.S. history lessons should be encouraged about historical figures from racial or ethnic groups who have been omitted from past lessons. Parents were also encouraging of students reading books about authors from a variety of racial and ethnic backgrounds at 60%, compared to reading books that include stories about LGBTQ people, with only 32% of people responding positively to that. The poll results indicate that as people on the quote unquote radicalized left and right try to speak for parents, the majority of parents are in the middle of issues like these, the teaching of history, which is very much true about how I have seen this personally in my day-to-day talks with people, both in real life and online. So that tracks. 1 second. Sorry, everybody. Allergies are kicking my butt. So let's get some comments in here. All right. So this is good. We have a European watching. So for a European watching the United States with August eyes, the Biden administration has turned into one of the best in decades. That's good to hear. Let's see. Now, don't say, he continues on, don't say gay is one of the most egregious violations of the First Amendment ever. I agree to an extent. There is some sticky issues when it comes to education, but I generally agree with you. So, okay, let's continue on here. So we have some SCOTUS updates for you, and we're going to go ahead and let SCOTUS blog, the best in the business, discuss some of these issues um, in updates they have. So we're going to go ahead and go over to them. Let's see. Sorry. Here we go. No. Here it is. Sure. Oh, come on.
Finished their March sitting for oral argument, meaning when
We're gonna
they
try to
hear
start this
cases
over.
in the court.
There we go.
3 Supreme Court updates. Today, the Supreme Court finished their March sitting for oral argument, meaning when they hear cases in the courtroom. They won't take the bench again until April 18th, and we still don't know if the court will be open to the public by then. Right now, it's still closed to the public, and they haven't let us know yet. That also doesn't mean we won't be getting opinions between now and then. In fact, we'll be getting at least one opinion tomorrow morning at 10 a.m., and we'll be live as always. Justice Thomas, who was released from the hospital last Friday, participated actively in oral argument this week, but remotely. We still don't have additional information about his diagnosis or prognosis, just that he was treated for an infection. And finally, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson's confirmation is looking more promising.
True.
Republican Senator Susan Collins says she will vote for Judge Jackson. Collins was one of the 3 Republican senators who voted to confirm Jackson to the D.C. Circuit last year.
And it is likely that the same 3 Republicans will vote to confirm her to the Supreme Court as well. There is a little bit of bipartisanship with her support, but it is all but assured at this point. Like basically it's assured at this point that she will be confirmed to the Supreme Court with all Democrats supporting, and at least right now, Susan Collins supporting.
Don't be surprised if we get another Republican. Who would you guess?
All right. So that is an update from the SCOTUS blog. Again, best in the business when it comes to Supreme Court updates. And so, yeah, but we have more from this. And we're going to go back to SCOTUS blog here to talk about some free speech rulings that happened over the last week. So let's go ahead and listen to them on that because it was, again, best in the business. Hey, so we'll go ahead and go over to them.
Unanimously
start that one over. I
embraced
keep forgetting that I have to.
in a case that pretty much.
I'm sorry. I keep forgetting every time I switch tabs to display, I have to re-put it up on the screen. I apologize. All right, let's go ahead.
Challenges how far you can take trash talk under the First Amendment. The Supreme Court just unanimously embraced freedom of speech. David Wilson was elected to the Houston Community College System Board of Trustees back in 2013 and almost immediately started talking shit about the board and its members. He said the board had a pay-to-play culture, criticized a $45 million deal to establish a community college in Qatar, and he sued the board and some of its trustees, saying they violated the bylaws. So the board, in a very boardly manner, returned the favor to Wilson, passing a resolution saying that his conduct was not only not appropriate, but also reprehensible. Wilson tried to argue.
Oh, just pausing it real quick. The West Dude, I'll get to your comment in a second because I have some issues with it, but I do understand it though.
The censure was unconstitutional retaliation for his exercise of free speech, but the court didn't buy it unanimously. Gorsuch, writing for the court, said the decision was a narrow one, so a censure could be unconstitutional retaliation, but not this one.
All right.
In a case
that was a very interesting court case. I'm going to have to personally read the decisions on that one because that does, even though it was narrow, it does have ramifications for it. Now, the West Dude, talking about our previous topic on the subject of public education and LGBTQ issues, the comment wasn't very accurate. Schools do have a mandate not to expose children to indecent material, and as the anti-grooming bill only applies to planned curriculum and not spontaneous discussion, and only K through 3. The problem is with the way the bill is written. The bill is written very vaguely, and it errs on the side of the parent and gives them the ability to sue not only the teacher but the school district itself if they feel that this law has been violated. That feeling of law being violated is entirely subjective. Also, it is not just K through 3 education. It explicitly outlines K through 3 education because it wants to make that the focus. But the next line with a comma says that this is not a direct quote, but this is what it says, that any material that is not considered age appropriate. Age appropriateness has not been determined by the Florida's legislature or the Florida Department of Education. Not only that, it is included in that vague language of what a parent does not feel like is age appropriate. The goal here is to open up the schools boards or the school systems and individual teachers to lawsuits in an effort to actually destroy public education. I believe that 100%. That's why they did the anti-mask mandates in schools. That's why they're doing this. That's why they're trying to include vouchers, trying to include everything. The goal is to destroy public education, and they're using anything that they can to chip away at public education and the support for public education. With the COVID mask mandates in schools, they are targeting liberals to get them to not support public education. With this, they're targeting conservatives to get them to not want to not only not support public education, but also to be a weapon against public education. It it applies to whatever the parent feels like it. It is very vaguely written. That's all I gotta say on that. That's the way I've read it, and so that's what I'm saying. All right, but let's continue on. So, uh, we'll talk about Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. So, after a week of Judicial Committee hearings on the nomination for Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, in which some Republican senators played to their QAnon base and asked if babies were racist, it's all but certain that Jackson will be confirmed. Senator Susan Collins, as we just heard, Republican from Maine, reported this week that she will vote to confirm Judge Jackson. Senator Lindsey Graham is a no, as are quite possibly all other Republicans except Susan Collins and maybe Mitt Romney. Senator Manchin has stated publicly that he will support Judge Jackson's confirmation, while Senator Kristen Sinema has not said what her vote will be yet. The Judiciary Committee will meet on Monday to review the confirmation, a traditional step in the process, and the full Senate will vote on April 11th. Continuing on to Justice Clarence Thomas. And hold on, I do have to go for a second. I gotta blow my nose. Deeply, deeply sorry, but I do have to blow my nose. Oh, I was muted. Okay, cool. Sorry, everybody. Thank you. Yep, no sound. So muted. Yeah, I had my little headset's got a mute button. I forgot to mute it. So you got sound now? All right. All right. So let me actually continue. Thank you, everybody, for your patience. Streaming remotely is kind of a pain in the ass, but we're here. We're doing it. All right. So let's continue with Justice Clarence Thomas. So Justice Clarence Thomas was hospitalized last week, but has recovered and participated in oral arguments remotely this week. He faced a firestorm of revelations of his wife's involvement in the efforts to overturn the 2020 election began to appear in the media. Now, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has called for his resignation. Senator Booker is demanding a code of ethics for the SCOTUS. House Majority Leader Nancy Pelosi has said that he should never be appointed to the court in the first place. Democrats are insistent he recuse himself from all cases concerning the January 6th insurrection. Why? Why is that the case? Well, I hope none of y'all have been living under a rock, but this is actually very important. So let's go ahead and get into it. In the weeks between the 2020 presidential election and January 6th attack on the Capitol, Virginia Thomas, the wife of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, sent a barrage of texts imploring President Donald Trump's chief of staff to take steps to overturn the vote. In one message sent in the days after the election, she urged the chief of staff, Mark Meadows, to release the Kraken and save us from the left taking America down, which is directly related to a popular conspiracy theory advocated by lawyer Sidney Powell. In another, she wrote, quote, I can't see America swallowing the obvious fraud, just going with one more thing with no frickin' consequences. She added that, quote, we just cave to people wanting Biden to be anointed. Many of us can't continue the GOP charade. The text detailed Mr. Meadows' interactions with Republican politicians as they planned strategies to help keep Trump in office in the weeks before the riot. The committee obtained 29 texts between Ms. Thomas and Mr. Meadows, 28 exchanges between November 4th and November 24th, and one written on January 10th. The text messages, most of which were written by Ms. Thomas, represent the first evidence that she was directly advising the White House as it sought to overturn the election. In fact, in her efforts to keep Mr. Trump in power, Ms. Thomas effectively toggled between like minded members of the executive and legislative branches, even as her husband heard election related cases. Justice Thomas has been Mr. Trump's most stalwart defender on the court. In February of 2021, he wrote a dissent after the majority declined to hear a case filed by Pennsylvania Republicans that sought to disqualify certain mail-in ballots. And this past January, he was the only justice who voted against allowing the release of records from Trump's White House and related to the January 6th attack. Mrs. Thomas called on November 3rd, the election day, a heist. Mrs. Thomas calls November 3rd's election day a heist and repeats debunked conspiracy theories, including one pushed by QAnon that falsely alleged that voter fraud had been discovered in Arizona on secretly watermarked ballots. The text showed that she was communicating not only with Mr. Meadows, but also with Connie Hare, the chief of staff to Louis Gohmert, the Texas Republican congressman who sued Vice President Mike Pence to force him to certify Mr. Trump as the victor of the 2020 election. The text traffic also suggests that Miss Thomas was in contact with Jared Kushner, the former president's son-in-law and advisor. Sidney Powell, the lawyer advising Trump's campaign team, known for unleashing wild conspiracy theories of voting fraud, comes up repeatedly. Now, on November 13th, for instance, Mr. Trump included Ms. Powell in a tweet list of his team's lawyers. That same day, Ms. Thomas urged Mr. Meadows to support Ms. Powell and said that she had also reached out to Jared to do the same. Just forwarded to your email. You just forwarded your Gmail and email I sent Jared this AM, she wrote. Quote, Sidney Powell and improved coordination now will help the cavalry come and fraud exposed and America saved. All right. All right. So continuing on. She also quoted language circulating on pro-Trump sites that said that, quote, Biden crime family and ballot fraud conspirators, elected officials, bureaucrats, social media censorship mongers, fake stream media reports, etc., are being arrested and detained for ballot fraud right now and coming days, and will be living in barges off Gitmo to face military tribunals for sedition. She added, I hope this is true. I don't. Okay, for those that may not be aware, Virginia Thomas has always been this cray. She's always been this cray. And this was before the hold on a second. So continuing. So before Clarence Thomas was hearings began for his Supreme Court justice seat, she was already conspiratorial and very much a Republican conservative operative of the utmost conservatism. We're talking like Tea Party before it existed. After his confirmation process, she felt personally slighted with the calls and accusations against Thomas about his sexual impropriety and his sexual harassment of various women, and took that personally and actually thought that the Democrats were going after her and him, and that made her even more cray. All right. So this is something that's been brewing for decades. And everybody knows that everybody knows at least one person that has gotten a little bit older, gotten into their senior years, and just stopped giving a fuck about everything. And that's where they are that's where she is. And that's why in my opinion, her true words, her true opinions are coming out to bear. Now, another thing that needs to be mentioned here is that she has always been a lobbyist of some sort. And that lobbying effort increased after Clarence Thomas, ascended to the Supreme Court. So there's a lot of information here. And although this is all about January 6th, this shows that there might need to be reforms to the Supreme Court on a constitutional level, not just because of what's happening with Clarence Thomas, but also because of how the court is being more overtly seen as political, and it is causing issues around social policy and social trust within America itself. But let's continue on. So, in recent published remarks, Ms. Thompson downplayed her role to the group, or at the group rather, but also said she attended the January 6th rally at the Ellipse in Washington. She added that she was disappointed and frustrated that there was violence that happened following a peaceful gathering. The House Select Committee that is investigating the January 6th riot has indicated they will ask Ginny Thomas to testify. The issue of a code of ethics for the SCOTUS has long been a topic of conversation and concern. The debacle may finally push it to happen. Speaking of stuff, there is actually an episode that is relevant to this. It was social trust theory. Said. So let's go ahead and get that up. And you can find that episode. You can find the social trust theory episode on wherever you can get podcasts on Spotify, iTunes, iHeartMedia, Google, everything. We're pretty much everywhere. You can even say, "Hey," I'm not going to say it, but you can even get your smart speakers to play it over Google and over Amazon. So yeah, just more information for y'all. All right. So now we're going to move into some state politics here. And we're going to start with the evergreen state of Florida. So a federal judge has barred Florida from enforcing the bulk of its new restrictive voting laws today. This is a win for advocates who have said that the law was discriminatory and needlessly infringed on Floridians' voting rights. The ruling is the first major invalidation of a spate of restrictive new election laws passed in Republican controlled states last year. These laws resulted from voter fraud and anxieties fueled by President Donald Trump's stolen election lie. Again, it's a lie. The election was not stolen. The Florida law added new restrictions on drop boxes, third party voter registrations, and mail voting. It was challenged last May in federal court by voting rights advocates led by the League of Women Voters of Florida. In a stinging 288-page ruling, the U.S. District Court Chief Judge Mark Walker declared the bulk of the state's new voting rules unconstitutional and issued a permanent injunction barring their enforcement. The plaintiffs allege that the SB 90 runs roughshod over the right to vote, unnecessarily making voting harder for all eligible Floridians, unduly burdening disabled voters, and intentionally targeting minority voters. Let's repeat that. Intentionally targeting minority voters. It seems to be a pattern. I wonder why. Oh, I guess I can never figure that out. My God. Now, all to improve the electoral process of the party in power. Walker, who was nominated by former President Barack Obama, wrote, having reviewed all the evidence, this court finds that, for the most part, the plaintiffs are correct. Now, the complaint was filed in Tallahassee court Thursday by LGBTQ rights organizations, Equality Florida, Family Equality, and the National Center for Lesbian Rights, as well as several Florida families. The complaint alleges that the law violates the constitutional protected rights of free speech. Oh, this is a different case. I'm sorry. So this is a new case. All right. So this is about the Don't Say Gay bill. So the complaint alleges that the law violates the constitutionally protected rights of free speech, equal protection, and due process of students and family. Quote, this lawsuit is a political Hail Mary to undermine parental rights in Florida, a spokesman from Governor Ron DeSantis' office told ABC News. This calculated, political, motivated virtue signaling lawsuit is meritless, and we will defend the legality of parents to protect their children from sexual content in Florida public schools. Now, as we said earlier in the program, we at Crowdsourced Politics wish that people would understand the difference between sex, gender, and sexual activity. The talking about the existence of gay people, trans people, etc., is not inherently sexual. At least actively sexual. It's not about necessarily sex. It's about attraction and love. You can tell kids that sometimes people date or live together or marry those of the same sex and not have it be sexual. It doesn't have to be sexual, or at least overtly sexual, like as in fucking intimate contact. Um, and they're against this because if you say that this is fine, or you say this exists and it's more or less normal and you shouldn't shame people over it, then you're pushing acceptance, and that is something that Republicans do not want to have happen. They still want There are a lot of Republicans still want there to be gay people in the closet. And we're seeing this pushback happening because the rapid acceptance of gay people after Obergefell has pushed the religious political right to the edge of, for lack of a better phrase of this, opting out or entirely being against the United States entirely. And that's why we're seeing some of this. Now, his office further slammed the lawsuit, stating the complaint claims are erroneous. This law does not chill speech. Instead, it returns speech on these topics to the parents. It then it quells speech because you're saying that other people can't talk about it. You get the disconnect here, DeSantis. I'm sure you do. You're not an idiot. You're an accomplished man. You have like you went to it's not West Point. I think you went to the Naval Academy. Like, this dude isn't stupid. It's not dumb. Not dumb at all. All right. He knows what he's doing. Continuing on, he says, the law does not prohibit teachers from having opinions, lifestyles, or advocacy in their personal right on their timeline, on their own time. And this law does not prohibit teachers from responding to students' questions, except it does. As we stated earlier in the program, this law is written so vaguely that if a parent believes that this law has been violated, it errs on their side and the lawsuit has to go forward for the court to make a determination if this law has been violated. It is very difficult to say that this law doesn't have merits before a case is heard. You can't have it thrown out. It errs on the parent's side, and it is designed to drain bank accounts of school districts that don't adhere to the spirit of the law, which is to not talk about it at all. It is explicitly told to not talk about it through case through three because that's an easy win for them. People are like, "Yeah, I don't want my 7-year-old learning about gay people. Whatever. They're 7. They can't understand that, right?" It's very kind of intuitive to most people that that's the case. It's wrong, but I get it, right? But it's also targeting people that aren't in those age categories by making it so vague. Now, supporters of the bill argued that schools are indoctrinating students with ideas about sexual orientation and gender identity. They say parents deserve more input in the services children receive and the conversation children are having about these topics. I am all for parents talking about their kid, talking to these kids about it. I think that these conversations and the mere saying that these people exist is not indoctrination, it is exposure. If simple act of exposure is indoctrination to you, I think you have the problem. Now, quote, I think the last couple of years have really revealed to parents that they are being ignored increasingly across the country when it comes to their kids' education, DeSantis claimed at the signing. I don't think that's the case. You're not being ignored. You're you have every ability to shape how your kid learns, either through private school, homeschool, school boards, teacher parents associations, curriculum reviews, etc. If you're not participating in these processes, you're giving up the say that you have. And not only that, you can opt out your kid from learning about pretty much anything. But you have to be an involved parent. You can't just be a parent that sits back and assumes the school teaches what you want to be your kid to be taught. You can't assume that the school is going to have your worldview in mind. Now, he added, we will make sure that parents can send their kids to school to get an education, not an indoctrination, as they try to indoctrinate kids into their worldview. The bill is expected to go into effect on July 1st. Now, I know that this topic is getting us a lot of comments, so let's go ahead and see some of those comments now before we move on to the next topic. Let's see. Yes. So Telemachus Rex says institutional reform is necessary, but more deeply, there needs to be a widespread social repudiation of autocracy and conspiratorial-minded conservatism. This was back on our last comment. I'm not able to do Discord right now, West Dude, but I'll get your comment on here. I posted in your Discord, the parents has two options. One is mediator and two is sue the state. And there is no trial, no jury. It's just a summary judgment. Yeah, that's the problem. It's a summary judgment. Now I don't know what this mediator thing is, so I'll look into that more. So if I'm wrong, thank you for the correction. I appreciate that. You're continuing on saying the judgment remedy, and it does not have to include monetary rewards. No, but it still has costs. The point is to increase costs. It's not to like. Okay, so that's on me. So the point is that it's to increase cost to the school because the school is going to have to hire a lawyer and argue its case in front of a judge, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that bleeds the school districts dry. That not necessarily going to bleed the school district dry, but it is in effect doing a similar thing. So if you sue and it errs on the side of the parent where the judge has to see the case, then the school district has to pay for a lawyer, argue its side. Parent does it the same, etc. So it's done in that way. Let's see. So we got maybe it isn't me. Parents need to teach their kids about gender and sex, not a teacher. This is non-parents trying to get votes for their party. We parents have the only right to teach our kids about certain things. Continuing on, they say this is bullshit spin coming from a bi man who is also a parent of a gay son. Leave our kids out of your views. Now, maybe it isn't me. I understand your situation here. This is the problem though. It's not just about you. It's about all the people that are not as open about talking about the existence of these people as you might be. Um, and I think it is better for everybody to have some sort of general exposure to the existence of trans people, trans LGBTQ people. This does not mean that we have to talk about explicit sex, but this does mean to be like, hey, some people form lifelong uh, relationships with people of the same gender or sex, and that's okay. That's it. Saying that's okay, or maybe even saying, they do it. We don't make fun of them for it or whatever. These laws are designed to make it to where you can't say even that. And that's the problem. All right. Okay, the West dude, I will, like I said, I will look at the comments that you posted in my Discord. If you want to private message them to me as well, so I don't miss them, fine. But because I'm traveling, I don't have a good way of looking at Discord right now. But I'll take your word for it, and if I have to issue a correction on next week's episode, we'll do that. We'll do that. But I thank you for correcting me if that is the case. All right. So let us continue on now. Oh, but before we continue on, hey, Ken, everybody, thank you so much for joining us on this news roundup. We greatly appreciate you joining us. If you like what you hear so far and you have not done so, please go ahead and smash that like button and subscribe. It really does help us out for your algorithms. We also have a Discord community. You can find it at the top here or in the description below, and we'll have things on our Discord for contests and that sort of thing as well. And hey, follow me on Twitter at Crowdsourced Poll, where I like to share memes, and talk about whatever else I feel like. Sometimes I step in it, sometimes I don't, but it's always a good time, and you can always hit me up on there. So okay, let's go on to the rest of the program. Okay, so if you've watched this program before, you know that I have a love-hate relationship with cryptocurrencies. I think that crypto is a thing that can be good, but right now it is not. It is largely scams and what's the best way to say this? A speculative asset. And in that, we have some news about how it is both coming off from a TikToker that created a crypto scam as a social commentary. So let's go ahead and talk about it. So cryptocurrencies have grown in popularity and valuation, giving rise to parodies and obvious scams. But nothing up until now has prepared you for the literal scam coin, otherwise also called simple, cool, automatic money. The wild creation of a TikToker who goes by Dre and is very open about having no clue about what he's doing. And as the founder of new cryptocurrency with a $2.5 million market evaluation cap. Quote, I don't know how to do none of this shit. I just made this coin as a joke. Dre, his real name of Andre Lewis, said in one of his many TikToks promoting scam, while simultaneously ripping into other, more serious quote unquote cryptocurrencies and relishing in the ridiculousness of his own creation that, for one reason or another, some people have actually invested in. I'm a regular motherfucker that just so happened to make a coin, and now I've got to make this bitch useful to the world, Jerry said in another video on Twitter. This is the FUBU of crypto. For me, by me. God damn, this is the FUBU of motherfucking crypto. This was for me, but now that's y'all bought it. It's for us, by us. Dre said in an interview that he created scam to poke fun at other shit coins or cryptocurrencies that are clearly pump and dump schemes, but at the same time make money for people willing to put money behind it without any lofty talk to convince people anything more noble is going on. Scam is speedrunning the path of many cryptocurrencies. It hit 70 million market cap, the snapshot current value of all tokens in circulation, almost immediately after launching, then slumped to 7 million, then 5 million, and now sits at 2.5 million. Quote, I'm a regular motherfucker, just happened to make a coin, and now I've got to make this bitch more useful, as we already said. So Dre said that in an interview that he created, oh, this is duplicated. Dre said that they only cost him a few $100s to create the scam coin. I named it Scam. I wanted to call it Scam just blatantly, but I wanted a cool name for it, so I came up with Simple Cool Automatic Money, Dre told Motherboard. That's how people fall into scams in the first place. That's what they think they are. So I named it, minted it, and about $400 or 0.7 BNB at the time, minted 10 trillion coins and told people about it. Now, Dre said that all this started as a joke, a middle finger to coins that pretended to be a great innovation that would usher in the future, but are really just ways for speculators to exploit people desperate to get rich quick. Kind of like, it's like we're going back to the 80s. Everybody thought we were going to go into roaring 20s, party like it's 20s, flapper girls, dapper dudes, and all that. But no, we're going to the 80s, everybody. Time to scam the man. All right. And that's what we're seeing here. Cryptocurrencies, and a lot of them are pump and dump schemes like penny stocks were in the 1980s. Actually, kind of like the 1920s. You know what? It's the 20s. All right. It's the 20s. Ah. All right. But continuing on. So, in a long tradition of parodies that turn out to be kind of serious, like Dogecoin, which began as a joke built around a puppy meme, but today enjoys billions of dollars worth of trading volume each day and has market cap of just shy of $41 billion. Or the Garlic Coin, a clear parody when it was born within the pages of a satirical business meme magazine called Meme Insider in 2018, but which cleared a $16 million market cap in April before sinking back down. And in a turn of events worthy of curling monkey's paws around the world, people did invest in Scam. In a TikTok video announcing the coin, Dre displayed a market tracker showing that Scam's market cap had already reached $70 million soon after launch. When I saw that $70 million cap, I got scared because I made this coin, but it had no use, he told Motherboard. I talk too much shit on the internet about useless ass coins for mine to be useless. You can't parody life when life is already a parody, my guy. It's so funny. So Dre said to the community, the scummily, this is why it's doing good. You're making good jokes, and people are like, ha ha ha, money, 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 make it rain. It's so funny. So funny. Sprang up around the coin, and that these people pumped out memes and materials and even made flashy websites themselves. There's an active Discord channel dedicated to scam with more than 2,000 members. Amazingly, Dre claims he did not know these people beforehand. The original scam website that popped up, they did it that night, Dre told Motherboard. Now we've got a more polished one that I'm working on with a team on the Scamily.io. But things have been moving so fast, it's hard to believe. Dre said that all the attention began to turn into harassment once the coin's price began inevitably to fluctuate, because of course it did. Now the joke has some money behind it. Dre claims he's been thinking about ways he can make something useful with scam coin. They'll continue to pump the value, but also teach people how to make their own cryptocurrencies or learn how to perform audits of other coins before investing in them. Part of that is, quote, burning token supply, which means sending tokens to a dead address where they are unusable forever, theoretically driving up the price of the remaining tokens. Similar to, but not exactly the same as, a stock buyback. Again, any scam that exists has existed throughout all time, and everybody's just finding new ways to trick people into these scams. He's not necessarily doing this because he knows this is fake and whatever, and he's just pissed that it became real. At least that's what I think is happening. And so he's trying to make something good out of it to avoid being part of the problem, I guess. Now, this is a very common feature of tokens created on the BSC or Binance coin, which uses various programming tricks to try and increase the token's value. I'm brand new to this space, but I am inspired by people who said they believe in me. People I don't know put solid cheese in this. That's a lot knowing they'll believe in me, he said. Maybe, as Dre hopes, Scam will make some people some money as part of the general speculative bubble. Maybe it will provide some educational tools or auditing tools to provide utility within the crypto world. At the end of the day, though, this is all taking place in a bubble that is baking the whole world trapped inside, unless that bubble bursts first. And in this environment, perhaps Scam is the asset we deserve. All right. So we got anything else going on? Nope. Chat is kind of not going right now. Nobody has any opinions on Scam? Y'all got me tripping. All right. But we need to talk about labor a little bit and what's going on with that. So coming out of, oh man, I took some new edibles and I think too much. I can't feel my legs. Oh, maybe it is me. I can't do edibles because of what you just said. So yeah. Anyways, let's continue on though with some news about an Applebee's and treating workers like shit. I mean, it is Applebee's. Isn't that what they're kind of known for? Shitty food and I don't know. But this is one of a lot of stuff. So, oh, gotta ban this person. Block user on YouTube. Boom. Sorry about the XYZ spam people. My bad. All right, don't click on that link. They got banned. All right, so let's get this tweet up first, and then we'll talk about it. So, all right. All right, so what we got here? So Wayne Peckgratz of Applebee's says that higher gas prices are great for business because most employees live paycheck to paycheck, and hopefully they can start lowering wages. And this is the letter in question, email, that states this. And this person is a manager of Applebee's. Actually, I think he might even be a regional, or at least was a regional manager. Reading directly from the letter, most of our employees base and potential employee base live paycheck to paycheck. Any increase in gas prices cuts into their disposable income. As inflation continues to climb and gas prices continue to go up, that means more hours employees will need to work to maintain their current level of living. We are no longer competing with the government when it comes to hiring. They were never competing with the government. Stimulus money is no more. Supplemental income is no more. This benefits us as prices rise. People who are relying on unemployment money will simply have less money to spend. it will force people back into the workforce. People are already entering the workforce. Everything this guy is saying here in this fucking email is par for the course for any run of the mill Republican when it comes to government benefits, but that money long ran out, and it wasn't more money than what you could make actually working. Anyways, even though they said that it was with a person that mainly relies on tips, that was not the case. Let's continue reading, though, this piece of shit letter. Furthermore, our competitors, especially mom and pop companies or smaller businesses, will have to either raise prices, cut employee hours, or pay employees less hourly to hit their profit margins. Some businesses will be able to hold on. This is going to drive more potential employees into the hiring pool. It's not how this works, dude. I'm sorry. Those mom and pop places close down. People will just try to get other jobs. They're not going to come work at Applebee's for fucking pennies. We all compete to hire out of the limited application pool, and there was a wage war. Of course, there was a wage war. A lot of people are delivering food for gig stuff. That's one of the things that a lot of these people don't get. The gig economy under COVID finally came into its own because a lot of people started using delivery apps a lot more. And this is important, so I'm gonna go ahead and just like make myself big here. So the gig economy has came into its own under COVID because people started ordering in more and people got used to it. And they were willing to give more in tips because they heard that they weren't getting played online. They weren't getting paid all their tips. They weren't getting paid much online, and so they started tipping more, sometimes even in cash. And what we saw is that people that were originally working at restaurants or whatever were starting to enter the gig workforce and actually start to make more money, being Uber drivers, DoorDash deliverers, etc. And with other gig apps such as like music teach me apps and stuff like that, we're seeing more people enter into this ephemeral employment pool of gig workers and actually being able to make a living off of that wholeheartedly without any supplemental income. So that is actually taking some of the slack out of the labor market, and that's why we see some more people enter the labor market than we did previously. And I think this actually probably started in like 2018, 2019 or so, and then it really took off under the pandemic. And so what this guy is saying specifically, I don't think it all is true. I think it's missing a huge portion of the change, the permanent change in employment and people's tastes and desires. But let's continue on. Let's see. We all competed to hire of the limited application pool with wage wars. All saw businesses hiring team members at $18 to $20 an hour. They will no longer be able to afford to do this. Trucking is the backbone of America, and as fuel costs rise, so will charges for shipping. If those costs cannot be passed on to customers in terms of menu prices, the only area that can cut sizable costs will be in labor. Labor market is about to turn in our favor. What can you do? This might be kind of true as more of the slack gets removed. But hold on, I gotta sneeze again. Or not. But I don't think it's 100% true. Besides hiring employees at a lower wage to decrease our labor cost, make sure you have a pulse on the morale of your employees. Your employees that live paycheck to paycheck are impacted more than the people reading this email. Be conscious of that. Many will need to work more hours or get a second job. Do things to make sure you are the employer of choice. Get schedules completed early so they can plan their other jobs around yours. Most importantly, have the culture and environment that will attract people. And that's so funny. Like it's funny that this is one of those situations here, seriously, that we're going to see a lot of where the salient point at the end of the conversation is true, but you treated the workers like so much shit and disposable at the beginning of it that you're just not going to care about anything else. And that's what we're seeing here. But that was the memo in its entirety, and it had significant fallout. But before we get into the fallout, I'm going to read this comment here from the Bath Time Boy. Odd name, but hey, I like it. So I was doing gig work for a while between jobs, and I didn't actually make more money than retail, even before gas prices going up, factoring vehicle wear and expenses. That might be true. I can only say from like the super cities perspective, like Austin and some of the other places, is that they were getting tipped $10, $20 to deliver food. And so maybe if you factor in the vehicle repair cost for that, and you don't own a newer vehicle, maybe it's a little bit worse for wear. But there were people that have just decided to do that because it was more stable, and I think that's what we're seeing. But you do make a good point, so I'll keep that in mind in the future. All right, so let's continue on. So when Holcomb read that note, he quit on the spot. Before he left, however, he printed about 2 dozen stacks of emails of the email, showed them to his coworkers, and put them up all over the store, on tables, the bar tops, the host stand, the doors, even the computer terminals. I gave everyone in the restaurant their food for free. We didn't even close the store, Holcomb 23 told Vice News. In the week since the email was sent, a mass exodus has happened at the restaurant. 4 out of 6 managers and at least 10 other workers either quit on the spot or handed in their notices, according to the workers. The tone deaf message, which we just read, was the breaking point for some of these workers. They told Vice News that they've been underpaid, overworked, and mistreated by their company during a time of unprecedented stress in the service industry. Both Applebee's and American Franchises, AFC Brands, which owns the Lawrence franchise, have distanced themselves from the Packett's email. Now, Applebee's Chief Operation Officer, Kevin Curl, said in a statement provided to Vice News that the Packett's email was, quote, the opinion of a single individual and not Applebee's. On March 22nd, after the Lawrence store had been shut down for hours, 2 area directors from AFC Brands came to the store to do what multiple employees described as basic damage control with the workers who were left. Quote, we talked to them for a few hours and they made many promises about things that were going to change, Wiggins said. Things have not changed yet, so I have not gone back. I don't actually expect them to make any changes. It hasn't worked. 3 people quit on Monday alone. A worker walked out in the middle of a shift, and Kelly and another employee put in their notices in solidarity, Kelly said. Quote, I believe that management is waiting for the issue to just fade away and then take the opportunity to fix all the problems it's facing, so I don't see a reason to stick around. So this is so true about what's going on. I think another thing that we've missed. I think one of the things that we missed here is that also COVID had changed how people view themselves in relationship to their job. Especially on the lower rungs of the economic ladder. When we as a society said that we have an essential work pool and didn't allow them to quit their jobs to earn to get unemployment, when we said that hey, you can go to work, you're going to get a bonus, all these other things to keep the economy functioning, it caused a small awakening within workers to actually feel what their value actually is and fight for that value. And when we see emails like this that point to that, hey, you're just a cog in a machine and you're disposable, we're going to try to keep you happy, but it's in our favor, you're going to see a lot of people get more pissed off um, instead of just saying, oh yeah, that's fine, that's just the way it is. And I think that's a good thing. So, but I want to know your thoughts. Again, if you have any thoughts about this, hit me up on Twitter at Crowdsourced Poll. So we got some comments in the chat here. We got Lispy from Twitch saying, hello there. Is this a US point of view? The UK in terms of energy is just catastrophic as well, although I hear your prices are a bit more stable. Yes, this is an American perspective of the news. We try to cover foreign news or foreign to the US news on a regular basis, but right now we are primarily focused on American politics and the American economy. With that said, I think that the bath time boy had a good response to you with this. I'll read that out. Well, our prices are more stable than the UK for sure, but it depends on location in the US as well. I believe there are aberrations in Massachusetts, Southern California, and a few other regions. And this is very much true, with California having energy gas prices upwards of $6. I think it did hit 7 at one point, but I'm not sure. I don't live there. I drove from Indiana or I'm sorry, from Texas, Austin, Texas, to Indianapolis, Indiana. For people that might not know, I basically goes across the South and through the Midwest a bit, going through Missouri, Tennessee, Arkansas, and depending on which way you go, maybe Louisiana, and maybe Memphis. And the gas prices from in Texas were anywhere between 370 and 390. The gas prices after you left Arkansas were up to roughly $4.45. I actually had to pull over for and get gas at that price. And then when I got to Indiana, gas prices were between 390 and 415 depending on where in the city I was. So that's how gas prices fluctuate within the south to the Midwest area. The total trip is actually about 1,000 miles, so it gives you some perspective of how much I spent on gas. But yeah, and that's what we're experiencing here, at least where's the places I drove through. So yeah. All right. We're making good time on this, actually. We'll actually have a full episode. Maybe only call it like 10 minutes early. And this is actually a great segue because our next topic up is actually gas prices. So thank you everybody for talking about gas prices. So on the top of American minds remains the price of gas, and the White House is paying close attention. It was announced today that the U.S. will release 1 million barrels a day from its strategic petroleum reserves for the next 6 months, the largest release in history. And this is huge. This is really big. This could also put downward pressure on prices. The release comes with domestic gasoline prices at more than $7 or more than $4 a gallon, a 27% increase since the beginning of the year. Quote, the scale of this release is unprecedented, the White House said. President Biden is committed to doing everything in his power to help American families who are paying more out of pocket. The announcement seemed to soothe oil traders, with the price of West Texas Intermediate, the U.S. benchmark for oil prices, declining 4% Thursday to less than $104 a barrel. The Biden administration also urged Congress to impose a fee on oil companies sitting on unproducing oil and gas leases on federal lands and waters in a bid to increase U.S. crude production. Hey, based Biden, get those people to produce gas, make it either expensive. Like I don't care how it's done. You're sitting on leases, you're trying to artificially increase prices to an extent by not producing gas that you're permitted to do it. So if you're not doing it, find them or find somebody else that will do it. This is one way to go about it. Another way to go about it, which I don't support, but I know a lot of lefties do, is actually nationalizing the oil industry. And another way to do it is with trade inducements. So promising to buy at a certain price and a lot to replenish the oil reserves. So if you're releasing 1 million barrels a day, then you promise the oil producers you'll buy back at today's current prices for the next year or something like that, or even a little bit above. That could also induce them to pump more oil and bring gas prices down further. Again, I personally don't care how it's being done. I'm just glad there is being some pressure being put onto these producers to actually produce rather than sit on, release some of the oil they had built up, and prevent them from thinking that stock buybacks is the best option. So yeah, Herbert says yes, true. Biden's move was excellent. I agree. This is a good move. So continuing on, right now, this is a quote from the White House. Right now, the oil and gas industry is sitting on more than 12 million acres of non-producing federal land, with 9,000 unused but already approved permits for production. The permits are issued to companies where oil is generally known to be at, or at least in the area where there's been wells already dug and gas is production. Maybe not all 9,000 will be able to produce them, but a lot of them will. They don't go out and give the leases on the land to produce oil that doesn't have oil in it, right? Now, continuing on, companies that continue to sit on non producing acres will have to choose whether to start producing or pay a fee for each idle well and unused acre. When they say an idle well, the well was already dug, they already found the oil there, they just don't have it on to pump the oil. Now, the announcement was met with skepticism by oil and gas companies, along with allies in Congress. Because, of course, it was. Quote, The gasoline and electricity prices that all Americans are paying right now aren't the fault of the bonehead in Russia, but the boneheads running our federal government energy policies, said one Republican member of Congress. Tapping energy reserves is not a long-term solution to solving the skyrocketing prices of gas. We're not in a okay, okay. This isn't a long-term problem. This is a supply shock problem. And the way you fix a supply shock problem is by releasing supply that you have. Releasing the strategic oil reserves is one way to do that. And those strategic reserves can be built back up and raise prices beyond the current open trade floor to induce people to produce more and or compensate for their lack of sales that they had during down times. That's why this is actually a good move, right? And Joe Manchin, we talked about him last week. Go check it out on our YouTube, called The Koch's Man in Virginia, West Virginia. It's a good little episode. Talk about the corruption that is in the oil and gas industry in Congress, with Joe Manchin being player number one, so to speak, is very, very good and kind of a addendum to this. So go ahead and check that out. Highly encourage it. All these people are basically just wanting the oil and gas industry to continue what it's doing. And what it's doing is trying to cause prices to raise, right? And when the prices get to a certain point, release oil to the market to capture some of that value. It's classic rent seeking. If you're a capitalist, you should be against this. If you've read Adam Smith, if you've read Milton Friedman, you should be against this. Rent seeking is bad for the economy. And that's all this is. Remember that. Now, there's other people, but before I get into that, let's see. Got some comments about this, so let's see what these going on here. Yep, true. So Harbert said that Biden approved more drilling on national land than Trump in the last year. That's true. Very true. I don't know how France is doing, but that's for the chat. All right, so yeah, let's continue on. So there's other states and other initiatives that are trying to also blunt the impact of rising gas prices on everyday Americans. And one of those is possibly the use of rebate cards to fight prices. Now, what does this mean? Let's talk about it. Now, after gas prices in the United States spiked to record highs this month, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said a refund might be on the way. During a Thursday press conference, the idea of giving Americans rebate cards or a direct payment was brought up, to which Pelosi said those are things that are being considered. But Pelosi rejected the idea of a gas tax holiday, saying that this would not be a way to guarantee the gas and oil companies would follow through on providing the savings. The potential strategy is one of several the U.S. is implementing to combat high gas prices, with the price of gas hitting record highs earlier this month before starting to slowly decline. Now, that decline that we're seeing here is partially because of Russia selling oil at a deep discount to China and India, which put price pressure on other producers to sell it cheaper. And that reason for that being is that it took their demand off the market. And since they were able to get it at such a cheap price and they were able to get so much of it, that pulling off of the demand also helped prices to stabilize a little bit. So it's both the sanctions are hurting Russia and helping us out at the same time. It's kind of a win-win right now. Just remember that too. But let's continue on. Though the prices have stopped trending upward, GasBuddy reported that the national average gas price per gallon is remaining steady at an elevated number, 62.4 cents higher than last month and $1.3 higher than this time last year. I don't personally like comparing anything that's happening now to 2020 or 2021 because we're still in a pandemic. Even though some things were opening up and there was a little bit more demand, it was crashed. So, but this is how people report it. Now, some individual states are also trying to create ways create their own solutions rather. In California, Governor Gavin Newsom proposed giving registered vehicle owners a $400 debit card to make up for the spike. And in Chicago, Mayor Lori Lightfoot announced free gas and public transit cards would be distributed using a lottery system. The spike in gas prices is largely a result of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. This is true. Remember, before the invasion of Ukraine, gas prices were hovering around, I want to say nationally, about 340-ish. And right after February, it consistently went up 10 cents every week to the prices that we're seeing now. Now, Russia is a major exporter of oil, especially to Europe. Though only about 3% of the U.S. oil imports come from Russia, business professor Adam Pankratz told Al Jazeera that the U.S. and other countries' sanctions on Russian oil would make a very tight oil market already that much tighter. And that would drive up prices of oil that in turn can drive inflation, which in turn can affect the U.S. economy. But as we said, because Russia is still able to find buyers for its oil and at such a cheap rate, you can see some of that price stabilization happening. So we had that giant run up, and then you had the come down a little bit. And I think we're going to stay around this stable price for at least some time until some of these other initiatives kick in. Now, so oil prices continue to remain above $100 per barrel. Patrick D. Hahn, head of the petroleum analysis at Gas Buddy, said in a Monday statement. He predicts that the California market, which has seen some of the highest gas prices in the country, will cool off, while the Great Lakes might see some price spikes. While the national average should start to stabilize for the time being, there's no telling what's around the corner, at least for now, as the volatility in oil prices persist. So this is all true. Yes. So Lispy, I can do this. This is a great question. So a lottery system. Could you explain what that means? Surely it would help the most vulnerable now. Maybe I'm ignorant to what she means. So the lottery system would likely in Chicago be a lottery system for poor people. That's just how Chicago has done things for a while. But as the bath time boy said, Chicago is a very weird place, and so for a way to make it fair for people with limited for a state that has limited resources to give to people, they they would they would open it up to everybody because people don't like helping poor people out directly in the United States. It's our weird thing. You know, people like a lot of people in the United States said that's not a government problem, that's a you problem, or that's a interpersonal problem. So if you want to help or you want to get help, you should turn to charity and religious groups. And so that's probably why we do things a bit differently here. Now, this is also true. Temporary cut the freaking taxes, and you don't need a whole new bureaucracy for rebate coupons. True. True. All right. But that's what I have to say about gas prices in the United States. So let's continue on with jobs and the labor market. Now, in a sign that the U.S. labor market remains tight, the number of Americans filing for jobless aid ticked up last week but stayed at historically low levels. Some 202,000 people applied for first time jobless aid in the week ending in March 26, the Labor Department said on Thursday. That's an increase of 14,000 from the previous week's number, which was the lowest weekly figure since 1969. In total, 1.3 million Americans were collecting jobless aid for the week ending in March 19th, the lowest number since December of 1969. Economists watch the weekly jobless claims closely since they generally track the course of layoffs. With the job market remaining extremely competitive, most employers are loath to let go of their existing workforce. Last week figures are, quote, is still a low level of claims consistent with extremely tight labor market conditions. Nancy Vanden Houghton, lead U.S. economist at Oxford Economics, said in a report. Continuing on, we expect initial claims to remain at about 200K or lower as employers who continue to struggle to attract and retain workers are likely to keep layoffs to a minimum. Employers added 678,000 jobs in January, the largest monthly total since July, while the unemployment rate dropped to a pandemic low of 3.8%. The new jobs numbers for March will be released tomorrow, which we will report on in next week's episode. Now, meanwhile, job openings hovered around a new record level in February, little change from the previous month, continuing a trend that the Federal Reserve officials see as a major driver for inflation. Because as the labor market tightens, employers to attract employees will raise their wages and to get those people. And the pandemic changed a lot of people's mindsets around this, so people are actually demanding more pay as well. So we're kind of in this tight labor market, and it might be a virtuous cycle of inflation, but it could get out of hand quickly, which is why the Fed is raising interest rates. Now, continuing on though, there were 11.3 million jobs available last month, matching January's figures and just below December's record, according to the Labor Department, and the number of workers quitting their jobs hovered near record levels. A separate report from the outplacement firm Challenger, Gary, and Christmas found that announced job cuts for March were 30% below their level of last year. Employers added 678,000 jobs in January, as we already stated. New jobs, blah, blah, blah. Sorry, the copy's got some copy paste errors. So I accidentally repeated myself. Let's see. Let's see what we're seeing. Only last year. Yep, this is true. Oh, wrong one. That's the one I meant to show. So the American unemployment rate is unrealistically and fantastically low. It really is. It's pretty amazing that it's so low right now, and there's still room to grow. Now, as we've said on this program before, some of that is because almost 1 million Americans died from COVID. So there's give and takes with all this. Okay, so we do have to mention that. So Lispy said that, I thought I was somewhat conservative in my politics, but if anything, the events of recent weeks has not just dispelled that idea, but completely destroyed it. Lispy, you are in the UK, I think is what you said earlier. Either way, the American conservatives are a different breed than European conservatives, and conservatives in the UK. Now, there's some overlap now in the UK with Nigel Farage and some other people, but still, typically speaking, in Europe, the UK, conservatives are still fairly liberal in their leanings and very much about like using government to help people and solve problems. The conservatives in the United States are not about that. Generally speaking, they want the government to solve some problems, but they want the free market and private individuals to tackle the majority of those problems. This isn't to say the conservatives are evil. It's just a different mentality between what conservatives in America want and conservatives across the world want. It's very more traditional in the United States as well. So, okay. Now, there's more stuff coming out of the labor market with new worker visas possibly being implemented. Now, responding to an increasing demand for temporary workers, the Biden administration announced today that it would make an additional 35,000 seasonal work visas available for American businesses to hire foreign workers ahead of the coming summer months. Now, this is important to hear. We have 1.7 or so million, was it 11.7? What was the number of jobs openings? Hold on, let me scroll back up my copy. Yeah, so we have 11.3 million job openings. That means that we don't have enough labor to fill all the jobs needs, which will eventually slow down the economy. As prices continue to tick up, that will slow down the economy. There will be less investment, and that could cause a recession. Getting labor when you need it is very important. And adding an additional 35,000 seasonal worker visas to that pool will help take some of the pressure off and allow businesses to grow and more people to hire and additional jobs from there being created as well. So this is actually a good thing, believe it or not. It's kind of unintuitive, but sometimes you need to bring in more labor to help labor. It's weird, right? So the visa program being expanded, known as the H-2B visa program, allows American businesses to hire foreign workers for seasonal non-agricultural jobs like mowing lawns, cleaning hotel rooms, staffing amusement parks, and waiting tables. Industries like landscaping, hospitality, tourism are particularly reliant on foreign nationals to meet high demand during busy summer months. Alejandro Moracas, the Secretary of Homeland Security, said in a statement that the decision was informed by current demand in the labor market in order to help support American businesses. Last April, the Department of Homeland Security said it would make available an additional 22,000 seasonal work visas after U.S. employers expressed a need for additional workers. And in December, the administration moved to make available an additional 20,000 of the visas, the first time that the number was expanded for the winter season, which typically sees less demand than the summertime. While the expansion is likely to be welcomed by employers that are looking to fill low wage jobs, some labor groups and those who want to restrict immigration argue that the visa program takes away opportunities from American workers and depress wages. This follows basic supply and demand logic, where if you have more supply of labor, that reduces the demand, and then therefore the reduced demand in labor pushes labor prices down. This is intuitive and it is largely correct. But one of the things that is most often missed about this is the increased demand that those workers put on other businesses and related industries to simply live their life. So it's give and take. Economists overall say that it's positive for the U.S. economy to have more workers, but there is give and take, and there are going to be winners and losers. But overall, the numbers go up. So we need to take care of the people that lose on this, and then there'll be a win-win-win, right? There will be no losers if we take care of people that lose out on this trade-off. But we don't like doing that in America. It sucks. But continuing on. In order to hire foreign workers on H-2B visas, employers must first prove to the Labor Department that they are unable to find American workers to meet their needs. In a statement, Mr. Maracas acknowledged that foreign workers who fill seasonal positions could face exploitation by employers. He said that the administration would crack down on such violations, as it should. Because if you crack down on the exploitation, you crack down on the reduction in the pricing that the labor is being paid, and that helps keep wages high. The reason that a lot of times that these things actually reduce wages is because not just because of the labor pool itself, but because of the exploitation that goes along with it. And if you're cracking down on exploitation and making sure that they're paid fairly for the work that they're doing, you eliminate that problem. Now, so going on and quoting him again, recognizing the importance of strong worker protection, he said, we will apply greater scrutiny to those companies who have a record of violating obligations to their workers and the H-2B program. Shouldn't you just not allow them to, I don't know, like, I think people would agree with me. You just shouldn't allow them to hire HB2 visa people if they have violated the law. Like, that's fair. You just stop the problem at its source. You company over there, you are no longer able to apply for these programs for the next 5 years because you violated the law. Oh, is somebody sub to me? I have none of my notifications on. Hold up. Gotta go to chat. Oh, thanks, Walljump, for gifting subs. Appreciate it. It really does help us out. Love you, dude. Sorry, everybody, for missing all the notifications. I don't have it on this computer, but I greatly appreciate all y'all. Appreciate it. All right. So, everybody, we are coming to a close on the news roundup. And what we like to do with our closes on the news roundup is talk about news that we find to be weird and interesting. And for you today, as a palate cleanser and kind of this just kind of fun little thing we like to do, we have two stories for you. First is a story about a beluga whale that sounds like a human. And this was reported originally by ABC News, and we have a TikTok video of that now. Let's go ahead and watch that video. Let me go ahead and get it up. Window, Chrome tab, beluga whale, share. Go back here and turn that on. Boom. All right, let's go ahead.
Animal researchers in California, a captive beluga whale, get this, sounded like a human. Sounds like me singing.
Would anybody would anybody hate me if I made that made that the theme song? Oh man, that's great. I know it's terrifying, but we're gonna hear it again.
Sounds like me singing.
That fucking bops. Oh man, can I get a remix of that? And like, I'll make that like the theme song, and it'd be hilarious. Oh man, that's good. I'm gonna fast forward just a little bit. Let's see.
And mimic human conversation. Dolphins and parrots have been taught to mimic the patterns of human speech, but it's rare for an animal to do it spontaneously. You know, that
All right, so you could hear that from them from there. Like they said, it's rare for the animals to do it spontaneously, but because of parrots and dolphins and whales' vocal cords, they're able to mimic human speech. And I thought that was pretty funny, and so I greatly appreciate you guys having a laugh with me. That was good stuff. Now we have another kind of weird sciency news thing coming out of. Um, uh, some Justin Wangett. He's a TikToker that does weird and interesting news. Our producer Nikki, CSP Nikki, you can find her on Discord. Found this story for us and thought it would be a good share. So we're going to also share this story with y'all. And credit where credit is due. We did not research this ourselves. We found this on his program. So please, if you do TikTok, go ahead and give him a follow. It's the least that we can do from using some of the work that he's done in our show. So here it is. All right. And then back here. There we go. All right. Content warning. Fetus.
A woman carried a petrified dead baby inside of her for over 60 years. Allow me to explain. A lithopedion is a rare occurrence in which a woman miscarries and the fetus is too large to be reabsorbed by the body, so it calcifies to protect the mother from infection. Lithopedions can often go undetected for a long time. Over 60 years in the case of this 91-year-old Chilean woman, Estela Melendez. She had to go to the hospital after injuring herself while falling, so they had to give her an x-ray. When they gave her the x-ray, they found what they thought was a tumor. And when they did the second x-ray, they found out that this was in fact a 4.5-pound ancient dead baby. And due to the risks associated with performing surgery on such an old woman, they decided that the best course of action was to leave it inside of her. A woman carried a
So biology is very weird, everybody. I'm sure everybody knows this. And that was news to me. So I had to share it with y'all. But with that, everybody, I am sad to say that we are out of time. Thank you, everybody, so much for joining us on the program today. Thank you for the corrections in real time from the West Dude. We really appreciate it. And yeah, if you liked this, because without y'all, we would just be some, like I said earlier, some people shouting into the void that is the internet, and that is not cool. So we greatly appreciate you joining us for the news roundup. Again, we do this news roundup Thursdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and we stream it live to Twitch, YouTube, and for now, Facebook. We will stop streaming it to Facebook eventually. I do not find that the program that I'm using right now to stream this is worth the cost that I'm spending on it currently to stream to Facebook. And Facebook, a lot of times we don't get that many views on Facebook, to be honest. We are today, but yeah. So that's what we're doing here. So if you did like what you heard, please go ahead again, like, subscribe, share us with your friends. It really does help us out, get to more people. And this is kind of the news that we like to do and like to have everybody tune in on. And so we hope that y'all like it. Please be sure to join the Discord. It's where we're going to have more things happening. And if you do Facebook, we do have a Facebook group at groups/trivia comments. And stick with us just for a second. We will be raiding a person. So we're going to raid. We're going to raid. Let's see who we're raiding today. We're going to raid. We're going to raid Hans of Hakir. Hans of Hakir is a friend of the show. He's been on the show before when we did panels for our news roundup. Kind of a liberal, young dude, likes to get gains, and so he's a good person. So we're going to go ahead and raid him. Oh, there we go. So yeah, we're going to raid him. And as we say at Crowdsourced Politics, keep your head up through the political storm.